February 22nd, 1980. It was a moment that has been frozen in time. A moment which transcended sports and hockey. It was mythic in scope, with heroes and villains and unimaginable feats of courage. Almost 3 decades after the fact, it remains the most improbable, the most impassioned, and the most important event in U.S. hockey history. And its impact would change the game forever.
They truly deserve the gold medal the way they worked. I never saw a group of people work that hard for 7 months.
I'm trying to remember exactly, but I think that's when he told us that we were born to be players, we were meant to be here, and this moment is yours. And, you know, Herb, as I said earlier, was a great motivator. And he knew exactly what to say at the right time.
They were a group of 20-something college players and amateurs, playing for a little-known coach from the University of Minnesota.
He got out on the road and watched all these players play, and he picked them because he knew they were the type of players he wanted on an Olympic team. A lot of it had to do with character, a lot of it had to do with skating speed and hockey sense and skill, obviously, but he knew we had to be fast, and he knew we had to be strong characters.
The team was given zero chance of accomplishing anything significant at the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, New York. At the time, international hockey was ruled by the powerful Soviet team that was coached by the dictatorial Viktor Tikhonov. It featured some of the greatest players in the history of the game.
Herb studied the Russians. He went over to Moscow and Russia and studied how their training was, and he picked up a lot of pointers from studying them.
In goal was the legendary Vladislav Tretiak. Up front, they boasted veterans Valery Harlamov and Boris Mikhailov. Young stars like Vyacheslav Fetisov, Vladimir Krutov, and Sergei Makarov were making their way on the team. That season, the Russians went 5-3-1 against NHL teams in exhibition play. And they destroyed the Americans 10-3 in an exhibition game at Madison Square Garden, just prior to the Olympics.
They had never seen them or played them before. This was at Madison Square Garden, and literally for the first period and a half, our players just were in awe. They were just watching. They weren't playing, they were just watching. So we got in a huge hole. But the second half of the game, we played them even. It was an even game the second half. And Herb used that as motivation, telling him, look, after you guys stopped watching them and started playing with them, you were just as good as they were. And so it worked to Herb's advantage in that situation.
There was some hope the Americans might sneak into the medal round in Lake Placid. But defeating the all-powerful Soviets? Not in a million years. Coming up, a shocking maneuver leaves the best on the bench.
Well, they pulled Tretiak after that goal, and that was a shock to me, and we looked around at each other and said, what the heck's going on?
Against a backdrop of political intrigue, where American President Jimmy Carter was threatening to boycott the Summer Olympics in Moscow later that year over the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, the Americans were the surprise of the round robin in Lake Placid. They tied Sweden. They beat Czechoslovakia.
We weren't surprised. We were relieved. The first game with Sweden, we were relieved that Billy Baker scored that goal, obviously. It would have made it tougher to win a medal had we lost that game. But that gave us, scoring that goal gave us confidence. Then we pretty much dominated the Czechs, which was a little bit of a surprise. I didn't think we'd dominate them. I knew we could beat them, but I don't think any of us believed we could dominate them the way we did.
They finished the preliminary round of the tournament with a 4-0-1 record, and to the shock of everyone, found themselves in the medal round, where they drew the powerful Soviets.
I just had a lot of faith in the kids, and Herb, obviously Herb did too. He pushed him and pushed him and pushed him. And those kids really, really worked hard. But he knew that they were a talented group of players. And history has shown that they were. A lot of them went on to have great NHL careers. But I was amazed at the talent level at the time, and Herb knew they were good. It was kind of our own secret. We knew we were good enough to win a medal. A gold medal, yeah. I think that it was a miracle, but still.
Well, the atmosphere was very high. I mean, at that point, now all of a sudden everybody became really interested in the 20 amateur hockey players, and the town was buzzing. You know, the scalpers were out there trying to get top dollar for these tickets. At that time, they were trying to change the game and get it live to 7:30, and really make a venue of it.
One man who always believed in the team was Herb Brooks.
Herb, the day he hired me, the day I arrived in Minnesota, he said, "This is your job." He said, "I'm going to be tough on these guys." I'm toning it down a little bit, but he was going to be tough on them. He was going to drive them. He said, they're different factions, they're different people. There's a lot of people in this room that don't like each other. He said, I'm going to be hard on them because I want them all to hate me in unison. That'll bring them together. And he said, it's going to be your job to make sure that you keep everything in order. Make sure everybody's on the same page.
He didn't need to say a lot. We knew what we needed to do. It's just a matter of execution. And I think a lot of times he just tries to keep us loose enough so that we don't goof up too badly.
He's a brilliant guy, really a brilliant guy. Now he's passed away, but he was a brilliant guy. And he knew what he had to do, and he followed it through to the T. And he knew what I had to do, and he made sure I did what I was supposed to do.
To the surprise of no one, the U.S. fell behind early. But despite being badly outplayed, goaltender Jim Craig kept his team in the game. They were trailing 2-1 with seconds to go in the first period when the massive upset began to take shape.
How I ended up on Mark's line at that time, I'm not sure. But I remember Davey Christian dumping the puck on the goal. And I was at about the red line, and I looked up at the clock and saw 3 seconds and started to skate to the bench. Then all of a sudden, Mark blew through the middle between the two defensemen, and I'm like, first of all, where'd he come from? Tretiak had left the rebound. 2 Soviet defensemen peeled away as if the period had ended. Mark picked it up and put it in the net at the buzzer. And all I kept thinking was, is it a goal? I hope it's a goal. And skated over, and obviously it jumped on Mark. And I remember keeping looking up at the clock to, making sure that it was not disallowed. And I guess I look back on it now and think, he's the only person on that team who would have gone to the net. Because he was so smart and such a great player that the period really wasn't over. But by all accounts, you pretty much think it is. And instead of going into the locker room like, oh my God, we're losing, we were, up here. That was such a big lift for us. Guys couldn't sit down. We were, let's go back out, let's go.
First 5 minutes of every period and the last 5 minutes, you really can't give up a goal because it really kills you or it helps you. And, that was a great part about us being coached. Dave Christian threw it on net, and Mark Johnson went to the net. Nobody gave up. And so that was an incredible goal that gave us just enough rejuvenation to go back out there and think that we could win.
So the Americans were in the game. But the more stunning development going into the second period was Tikhonov's decision to replace Tretiak, considered one of the best goalies in the world, with backup Vladimir Mishkin.
Oh, for me, many times USA and Canadian people invite me, Vladislav, how are you feeling after 1980? I feel bad, very bad, because we lost. Okay, if Team USA and Team Soviet same level, it's okay, no? Sports. Today win, tomorrow last. No, Soviet team very strong, maybe a little bit more strong for USA team. USA team is very good. It's very good. Everybody work hard together. It's very important. If Team USA no work hard together, no win never gold medal. Congratulations to Team USA. His goalie play very well. Everybody play very well. Good coaches too. I think a little bit luck, more luck for USA or Soviet Union. I play on the first period. And I think big mistake Viktor Tikhonov coach Soviet Union, because I play on the first period 2-2. Second period I no play. Tikhonov and dressing room said, Vladislav, you no play more. I very mad because I play all game. And I think big mistake coaches Tikhonov in 1980.
Well, they pulled Tretiak after that goal, and that was a shock to me. And we looked around at each other and said, what the heck's going on? Because we didn't think that warranted that type of move. And to be tied at the time, that stage of the game, and we had the crowd with us. I mean, the crowd was a big, big factor for us. And again, the emotions and the adrenaline's flowing, so we knew we were in a real game.
After the break, legends are born.
Everybody made a play at a certain time, and it was now my turn. And I was, right place, right time, and did the right thing with it.
Against all odds, the U.S. managed to stay within one goal heading into the third period.
Two things. First we had wanted to keep it in a one-goal game, and just to give us an opportunity to be in the game at the end, and we had done that. So we were pleased that we were able to hang tough. We'd given them an awful lot of scoring chances, and Jimmy Craig had played extremely well. So we knew that we had to tighten up defensively a little bit, but we were very happy to be where we were at the moment, one down at the end of two. The other thing was that we won an awful lot of games that year in the third period, and we really trusted our conditioning as a key factor in the third period. So we were happy to go into it knowing that the third period was our period, because we thought it would give us a real good chance.
Well, it's towards the end of the power play, and as we sat in there in between the second and third period, we had met our objective up to that point. We were close.
Out inside the blue line, I was coming off on the ice on a shift change. Buzzy Schneider had come off, and I jumped over the boards, and the puck came to me, and I brought the puck towards the goaltender. And I guess it's amazing how many things you can think of in such a short period of time, but there was a defenseman in front of me, and I thought, if he stays, I'm going to use him as a screen and shoot. If he comes, I'm going to pass by him, and I think it was Christian or Harrington breaking down my left side to the net, or Baker. Baker and Harrington, I think it was. Although Billy Baker to this day says he tipped it in. He's been telling me that. So the defenseman stayed, and I shot. And like I said, I've done that in college. I've done it in high school. The only thing I did, I kind of pulled it just a little because my body was going this way, and I was kind of shooting back to the left. But I know I got all of it. I got, pretty much all of the puck. And it went in. And now we have the lead. Again, like I said, everybody made a play at a certain time, and it was now my turn, maybe. And I was, it was, right place, right time, and did the right thing with it.
To see him score the goal and the leadership that he provided was really pretty terrific. But as a goalie, I took a quick look up at the clock, and there was an awful lot of time left, and it became an awful lot more pressure on me immediately. And so I just remember being, oh, good, that's happy. But why couldn't they have done that with 3 minutes to go or something? Don't piss these guys off with 10 minutes left. This is not something I'm looking forward to. And I remembered that, saying, oh man, you kind of want to get ahead, but you don't want to wake them up.
So many times in a game, you don't want the game to end because you're having so much fun playing. This clock couldn't go fast enough. It was like you'd go out, I scored with 10 minutes left, and the next time I took a shift and came back, it looked like the clock said 9:59. And it just never seemed to go down. But the other thing I remember is we didn't fold. We didn't sit back. And again, Herb, play your game, don't do anything different. Keep going after them, short shifts. And we'd change 4 lines in a minute and 10 seconds. We just kept sending people over the boards, going. And I've never seen a tape of the game, so I don't remember the last period, but I don't remember the last 10 minutes being where we were holding on. I thought we were playing pretty equal to them throughout the game. Other than the first period, I thought the second and third we played pretty well. And the thing I was afraid of was, are we going to sit back and let them come at us? Because if you do that, they'll kill you. And I don't think we did. I think we kind of stuck out our chests a little and said, you know what, we are a good team. And I remember plays made. I remember block shots, Kenny Morrow, Davey Christian, Mike Ramsey diving in front of people, Jimmy making the big save when we needed it. So everybody was doing all the little things that we needed to do in the last few minutes to win. But the clock still, like I said, never moved,
I was on the ice for this, and I remember the puck was in our zone in the corner. I didn't want to have anything to do with it, so I just dumped it back behind the net and tried to find a man to cover. I didn't want to be the one to goof this one up. We saw the clock, and just, it was bedlam. You can't fathom something like that happening. And as I've said many times, we play them 100 times, we're going to lose 99 of those games. But this was the one that we managed to win. It was unbelievable.
If you watch the games or if you watch the Russians play, they're paid to do this. They're professionals, but yet they're not to show any emotion. Whether they score or whether they win the game, it's part of their job. And when they were watching us score, and we sort of had this routine, whoever scored a goal, everybody was coming on the ice to congratulate you. And all of a sudden, at the end of the game, when we had finally defeated them, everybody's running around congratulating them. It was almost like you turned around and they were standing on the blue line with a smile on their face, happy for us. They knew they had played, hard and ended up coming up short, but yet sort of enjoyed the excitement and the enthusiasm and the energy we were showing because we won a hockey game. Where in their culture, they were taught not to do that.
The American kids did it. And with the clock winding down, broadcaster Al Michaels asked, "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes. Two days later, the Americans beat Finland to win the gold. The victory over the Soviets immediately passed into lore as one of the greatest upsets in sports history and one of the most significant single events ever.
It's incredible when we were up on stage with all the guys just recently and they showed some clips of it. The emotion is just incredible. It comes back because it's not for you, it's for your country during a time period that was just very important. And yeah, it was quite exciting. And it gets more exciting now because I think we're all out of the sport, that we don't have to pretend how fun it was because you're still playing and you have to do the right thing. We're old men now. We can just sit back and relax and say, geez, that was pretty cool.
Coming up, the miracle inspires a new generation of heroes.
I think it did wonders for the sport of hockey in the States, and you know, to this day, I don't think there's been you know, an underdog victory like that.
We didn't realize the support or the following we had throughout the country until it was all over. And we didn't even realize it until months later, because all the stories started filtering back to us.
After Lake Placid, hockey began to reach new levels of popularity in the States. The WHA had just merged with the NHL, ushering in an era of stability and growth in the game, and Americans were attracted to hockey in increasing numbers.
You know, Jim Craig, well, we had rights to him, and after they won the gold medal on a Sunday, and you know, Jim signed with us, I think 5 days later, and we had, I think, 5,000 tickets sold for our game on Saturday night with the Colorado Club. And we had over 10,000 people attend the Jim Craig press conference, and we sold out the building within a couple of hours. So that's the type of impact, you know, as a result, an immediate result of winning the gold medal meant.
That made a big impression on me. I think it did wonders for the sport of hockey in the States, and you know, to this day, I don't think there's been you know, an underdog victory like that. And it's great that it was in our sport, and it was our country that was winning it.
We had followed that team as they were putting it together, and we were really curious to see what would happen. And of course, when they kind of shocked the world like that, a lot of people jumped on that wagon, and it was such a huge event in the eyes of the USA's young hockey players. Amazing, and that's the national pride thing coming around too. It wasn't just that a group of guys went out and won a national tournament. That's fine, but I mean, they were young kids representing the United States, and I think this couldn't have been a more thrilling thing to experience for them.
Oh yeah, I remember. I mean, Lake Placid was only it's about an hour and 15 minutes away from my home, so I was actually sick that day, and when they played the Russians, and I was on my couch watching, and you know, I was jumping up and down, and it was unbelievable. I mean, then I went to Lake Placid, and when I was at Northwood Prep, every day I'd go to the rink, and they play it every day, so I got to see it about another 100, 200 times. So it was definitely, you know, it was exciting, the buzz. People were staying in my town and going up to all the events, and you know, that was great for upstate New York, and just, you know, the way the whole country came together around that team was, you know, you probably never see anything like it again.
I just remember, you know, I was probably 8, 9, 10 years old, and so I remember, you know, my family were tuning into the hockey, and then specifically remember when the U.S. team won the gold medal. I was at hockey practice, and I remember them coming over the loudspeaker saying that the U.S. had won, and we stopped and we all piled on each other and cheered and had this huge celebration, tapping our sticks, and it was like, you know, it was just such exciting news to us.
Yeah, I was 10 at the time, so we just got done with the tournament ourselves, so we were all gathering in the lobby and watching the sports and watching the game on TV, and you know, you just remember a lot of those players, and then having a chance to play with Neil Broughton and a lot of the other guys that were on that team and playing against them. It was, you know, you get to listen to a lot of great stories, and what they went through as just a bunch of college kids coming out of nowhere and beating the best team in the world.
I remember watching the Olympics and putting posters up of the rosters, and always finding pictures of guys skating around the ice carrying the flag, and the 1980 Miracle on Ice, and seeing that game replayed, and Sports Illustrated every Winter Olympics would kind of run a story, and they'd always have some of those same pictures, the guys skating around the ice, just hugging each other and throwing their sticks in the air, and it was one of the greatest celebrations, one of the greatest pictures I've ever seen. It just sends chills down my spine just thinking about that sort of thing, and being able to wear the country's colors and represent them in that way was a great honor also.
hockey had grown a lot in the 10 years I was playing pro hockey. And I was amazed at the talent level, but also the number of players that were playing. But after the 1980 victory, I mean, everybody in the country was aware of hockey at that point. I mean, whether they were a fan or a follower or became followers, they were aware that hockey existed. 100% of the population did, for sure. And from that point on, it just continued to grow in the U.S. and all the things that happened since then with in the NHL. It's just it continues to grow. And I know here in the Pittsburgh market, the Penguins have such a great following, and I think that's pretty much the case in most communities throughout the U.S.
Next, a smart route to the big leagues.
I think a lot of the lack of respect or deficient respect for the American college player was significantly changed after the Olympics.
In 1980, there were 10,490 registered hockey teams in the States. By 1990, there were 14,969. And by 97, those numbers had skyrocketed to 29,479 teams.
I think 80 had an impact in both traditional hockey areas and new hockey areas. It absolutely served as an inspiration to kids in some of the hotbeds, like Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, who were already playing as 7, 8-year-olds at the time, who really were extra motivated, and probably were going out on the pond or the rink, pretending they were Mike Eruzione or something like that. But that also helped, along with a lot of other factors, population shifts, NHL expansion, and other things, to bring hockey to most of the rest of the United States. And when you look at our national team rosters now, when you look at the composition of our player roster at our national team development program, you are now seeing kids from California, from Texas, from Illinois, from Connecticut, from the southeastern United States. There's hockey being played everywhere, and it is not as entrenched, it is not as well developed. In some instances, it's not as sophisticated maybe as what you see in Massachusetts and Minnesota and states like that, but it's now a 50-state game. We couldn't say that 25 years ago.
The game also took off at the college level.
Well, drop, Kate.
I think a lot of the lack of respect or deficient respect for the American college player was significantly changed after the Olympics, and I think NHL general managers and scouts started to look at American players differently and with more respect, and to scout them more aggressively, and that, I think, was a contributing factor to the percentage of Americans in the NHL rising in subsequent years.
It exposed the fact that the college league is a good league, because here's these players that can beat the best players in the world from Russia and the best players in the world in the Olympics, and they came together as these college kids, and wow, they're actually good. So yeah, it definitely would give it credibility and change the look of the league.
Young kids that were in their 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old that probably wouldn't have played hockey if that didn't happen. And I know a lot of the pros that were young at that point, that turned pro later, said that they had considered maybe going to play junior hockey as opposed to going to college. But when we won with all college kids, a lot of kids decided to go to college instead of following the junior path, and that was, I mean, I think that's great for young kids, that they would pursue hockey through college as opposed to losing an education.
I guess playing hockey in Michigan, there weren't a whole lot of players that were pro hockey players that came out of that area. There were a few. So I think when we were playing hockey, and I know myself, we kind of hoped for a college scholarship. That was one of the goals because we didn't know a lot of people that were making pro hockey. We dreamed of it. It was kind of like way at the end, but if we could get play college hockey, get a college scholarship. All of a sudden, then the 1980 team won the gold medal, and then the door seemed to open. And now, as a kid, we had an Olympic dream, and there was a chance to play pro hockey. And I really didn't know until I was 16 that I might have a chance because, like I said earlier, all the guys were a year or 2 years older, and they were bigger, they were stronger. And until I played my own age group at 16 that I realized I could put up some pretty good numbers and have a chance to go play junior hockey where I thought was the best place to play to become a professional. But I think your dream and your goals changed. And I think that 1980 team winning that gold medal kind of opened the door for a player from Michigan.
Coming up, the U.S. strikes gold again.
It actually, I think it shocked all of us because, 2 weeks before the Olympics, we were sort of the unknown team. We were trying to, going into venues during the pre-Olympic tour, and people were seeing us for the first time and just trying to get used to the fact that actually women did play hockey.
The Miracle on Ice marked a seminal moment in the game's development in the States. Team USA became a force in international tournaments throughout the 80s, and in 1996 beat Canada in a memorable 3-game final to capture the World Cup of Hockey.
I think when we won the World Cup of Hockey in 1996, one of its most important residual benefits was the confidence that it gave us. We had started our national team development program right around that time. We were looking for strategies and ways to take our hockey development of our elite players to a higher level. We've always had high regard for our hockey, but we've also had great respect for hockey in Canada, hockey in Russia, hockey in some of the Scandinavian countries, and there is still today an awful lot of parity among the greatest hockey countries of the world. All you have to do is look at the last 3 Olympic gold medal games with the NHL players. You've had 6 different nations in 3 gold medal games, so there's great parity there. But for us to be able to win that World Cup tournament in 1996, and to do it by leaving the United States down 1-0, and to go into Montreal to win a 2nd game and then a deciding 3rd game, and to be down in that deciding 3rd game by multiple goals with not that many minutes left is quite frankly, one of the great accomplishments, I think, in U.S. hockey history. Perhaps not at the level of the 1960 or 1980 Olympics, but very, very close behind. It was also with a generation of players, some of whom had been inspired by the Miracle on Ice, and admittedly so on their parts. Jeremy Roenick, for one. And we had a lot of the players, that next generation, if you will, of American stars, at or near the peak of their careers on that team in 1996. Brian Leach and Brett Hull and Mike Richter and Jeremy. I mean, it was a phenomenal team. And they got it done.
Back to Coffey. Mike hit a shot in there, right in. Gretzky was open. It hit his stick and bounced away from him. It's cleared to the empty net. It's going to go in. And the USA is about to win the first World Cup of hockey with only 41 seconds remaining.
I think that gave us a lot of confidence going forward, and was I won't say a watershed event, but kind of changed the way we looked at a lot of things, including, I think, staging teams with our best NHL players who were Americans who grew up in our system.
In the 90s, USA Hockey began developing a powerful women's program.
Now a chance for the U.S. to pass just off the end of the stick, and they now score as Tricia Dunn centers the puck in front.
the American women won the first ever Olympic gold medal in Nagano in 1998.
Growing up with the 80 team and then watching my brother in 88 and then just being a fan of Olympics throughout, just knowing I was getting a chance to be an athlete in the Olympics was completely overwhelming. It was hard to grasp. We got over to Japan and got all our apparel, and just the excitement alone of getting the apparel and knowing that you're wearing these potential medal jackets and your opening ceremonies gear, and it was all a dream.
Women's hockey was very, very small, in its virtual infancy back then. Primarily played in the Northeast, a handful of Northeastern colleges and universities. I'm not even sure, to be honest with you, in 1980 how many were varsity programs. That has come a long way, and a lot of that, of course, is catalyzed by being in the Olympic program as of 1998 and our winning our first gold medal in women's hockey.
It actually, I think it shocked all of us because, 2 weeks before the Olympics, we were sort of the unknown team. We were trying to, going into venues during the pre-Olympic tour, and people were seeing us for the first time and just trying to get used to the fact that actually women did play hockey. And then the day after the Olympics, everyone just had their inboxes flooded. We had these email accounts that you could write to the Olympians, and everyone's inboxes were flooded, and we were all in the village going, people are paying attention back home. Like, we had no idea. We're, halfway around the world, and it was incredible to see the response and to see people writing and saying, you're such an inspiration. My daughter was out on the driveway this morning, playing the hockey game over, and I wish I could have kept playing hockey when I was younger, but I had to quit because it was only with boys. All these stories just were surfacing, and these people were watching, and they were inspired, and we didn't, it was crazy for us because, we're used to having parents and friends watching us in the arena, and that's it. No other fans, so to have these fans around the whole U.S. was pretty cool.
Now is Potter looking for Granato. Potter walks out, takes the shot, they score. Cammy Granato looked to whack at it at the side of the net as Jenny Potter set it up, and there it is. You take the penalty, and they put the puck in the net.
After the break, a moment not to be forgotten.
It's impossible. I was thinking, this is impossible. And, that's why they call it Miracle on Ice, and that's why it should be called Miracle on Ice. And it was great for hockey, no question about that.
Housley onside. Housley score! That's
It was a great feeling. I mean, just growing up and watching the 80 Olympic team and doing what they did, it opened a lot of doors for a lot of guys in the U.S.
It was a fabulous experience, and of course no one expected the USA to win, and it was like kids playing with veterans. I mean, as everyone knows, the Russians, for all intents and purposes, were pros. They were called amateurs in those days, but they were pros, and in those days, we had to use only amateurs. The rules have all changed in the Olympics, and now you see the pro basketball players playing, and you see the pro hockey players playing, but that didn't exist. It was all amateur in those days, and there was no way that these kids could beat the Russian team. No way. But it was, it was an experience to go and watch it, and so the fact that they won was beyond belief.
When you watch documentaries, and especially for the United States, and all that was going on in Iran and other places like that, that thing, being underdogs, really lifted the country right off its keister. These kids did something they didn't know they did at the time, but they did. They lifted the entire United States right up. I think what it did too was, there's a lot of players who were good athletes, real good athletes that became hockey players. So I take a Brian Leach, for instance. Brian Leach was a multi-talented athlete. Could have gone into baseball as a pitcher, but he decided to play hockey. And there was others. And I think a lot of that was born from what that group did in 1980. It's always interesting to watch kids when they grow up and what sports the good athletes, the real good athletes, follow. And you're starting to see it again even today. A lot of the kids are going, I'll go back to the province of Quebec when Patrick Roy was a goaltender out in Montreal, moved on, the greatness of him. How many kids came out of there that were goaltenders that became great goaltenders? Lots of them. Jaguar is one of them, amongst others, because of Patrick Roy. 1980 had that same impact in the United States.
It had major impact. major impact, you know, with hockey in the States, because everybody knew about it and embraced it and knew it was, you know, how did that happen? And so everyone thought it was one of the greatest stories. And you still see on like countdowns of like the greatest moments in sports in the U.S. That's and you know, one of the top 10, and that's amazing when you think of all the sports events that have happened in the U.S. and all the great athletes and teams, and then the U.S. team is right up there with it.
Well, it was one great event that got national and international attention, and you know, hockey wasn't getting tremendous national attention up until that time. And I think that it was one more step in the growth of hockey in the United States, and certainly a very major step. And I think it's, you know, it was very beneficial to the league, to hockey at the college level, at the American Hockey League level. So it was good. It was really, really good. And those kids, I mean, it's gone down in history. There's been a movie, you know, it'll always be there.
Now here's a chance for Brock, and he scores!
As for the Miracle on Ice team, many players went on to have distinguished NHL careers. Center Neil Broughton became the first American-born player to record 100 points in a season and made 2 NHL All-Star appearances. Defenseman Ken Morrow, who joined the New York Islanders after the Olympics, became the first player to win Olympic gold and the Stanley Cup in the same year.
Well, it's pretty nice to win a gold medal and then a few months later win a Stanley Cup. I mean, that generally doesn't happen. I mean, they had a lot of good hockey players on that team. Neil Broughton, for instance, Mark Johnson. But Ken Morrow was the one whose impact, whose presence was felt more when he stepped right into the NHL, when he joined the Islanders for their home stretch run in '80 and played on the Stanley Cup championship team under Al Arbour. So that was a tremendous accomplishment for a very, very good young defenseman who went on to have a great NHL career.
Morrow won 4 cups with the Islanders.
Here's Ramsey shooting, he scores!
Defenseman Mike Ramsey played 18 seasons in the NHL. Today, he's an assistant coach with the NHL's Minnesota Wild. Craig Patrick was Brooks' assistant coach in Lake Placid.
New York selects from Kiwanis High School, Brian Leach.
He would become general manager of the New York Rangers. Later as GM in Pittsburgh, he would lead the Penguins to back-to-back Stanley Cups. Herb Brooks coached the Rangers, the North Stars, and the Devils in the NHL before returning to coach Team USA in the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, where they won a silver medal. Sadly, Brooks died in a car accident in 2003. He was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame posthumously in 2006.
It's impossible. I was thinking, this is impossible. And you know, that's why they call it Miracle on Ice, and that's why it should be called Miracle on Ice. And you know, it was great for hockey, no question about that in the United States.
It was a Herb Brooks orchestrated miracle.
It was a miracle. But its lasting effect was just as important.
The USA is about to win the first World Cup of hockey.
You can trace the game's growth in the U.S. back to that night in Lake Placid, when 20 young men and their coach dreamed a dream and then had the courage to fulfill it.
We live in a society where people have a lot of short-term memories. They think about what has happened most recently. If you want your film to be nominated for an Academy Award, you release it late in the year. Well, here's an event that occurred 7 weeks into the decade of the 80s. And so 9 years and 8 months later, it was selected by the sports writers of the Associated Press as the sporting event of the decade. And then 10 years after that, It was selected by USA Today and I think the AP again as the sporting event of the 20th century.
When I see young people, I always tell them to don't be afraid to dream and make sure you pursue those dreams because anything can happen. But you have to work for it because these kids that won the gold medal, they worked hard for 7 months, but they deserved what they got, and rightly so.
The 1980 U.S. Olympic ice hockey team. They brought a lot of people into their dream that day. Almost 30 years later, they still are.
We don't want to be in the miracle business. We want to be in the expectation business now. We don't want to be sneaking up on people anymore. We want to be considered favorites when we go into tournaments. And I think the overall level and quality of our hockey is so much stronger and deeper than it was 28 or 29 years ago.
February 22nd, 1980. A day that changed the game.